Hi, everyone. Welcome to night 5. I'll wait a couple of seconds for more people to join. Okay, let's get started. So, welcome to night 5. Can't believe it's already been 5 weeks since it all began, but I'm thankful for each and every week, especially those that are here in the live and those that watch the replay. Thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. So let's start with today. So just a small recap of the previous video. We left off with the conflict between David and Absalom, his son, and how Absalom tried to steal the throne from his own father. And after Absalom tried to trick many people, he went to 12 different cities all throughout Israel. Many people believed that he was a new king because of the way that he was, with the spies, he was telling them, oh, announce it when you hear the trumpet. And then when King David heard of what Absalom was doing, he decided to flee with his people so they can hide and they can stay protected and no innocent lives will be taken away out of Absalom's ambition to become a king and the greediness of getting power through, being the new king. But of course, at the end, Absalom was defeated and King David won the battle. But overall, it was God who gave King David the victory because even God stopped Absalom from causing more destruction than what he already did. And although King David and his people were safe from Absalom, um, King David was still sad from, the destruction and death of his son Absalom. And this is where we will continue. For tonight, we will continue one more chapter with the book of Second of Samuel before we move on to where the Lord will guide us in another section of the Bible for him to let us know what he wants us to know for our current seasons and preparation for the next seasons. So let's begin. So today we'll be focused on chapter 19 in the second book of Samuel. And let's get started. So we're going to start with verse 2. So the victory that day turned into mourning for all the people. For the people heard it said that day, the king is grieved for his son. In the people stole back into the city that day, as people who are ashamed steal away when they flee in battle. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son." The one thing for sure, I think in any death, it's sad, especially if it's loved ones, people we cared about so much. But I cannot even imagine how heartbreaking it would be for a parent, for their child to pass away. But in this case, Absalom passed away, and David was just heartbroken for what happened. And as I was reading this passage, what the Holy Spirit allowed me to see deeper was maybe perhaps King David felt really bad for what the relationship he had with Absalom. The 2 years that Absalom did come back, King David didn't call him. He still felt anger towards him for what he did to his other son Amnon. Which is understanding as a parent, we don't want our children to fight with one another, especially when the conflict just gets into even worse than how it started. So I understand, but for King David, he had his son Absalom there, and he didn't forgive him after 2 years. So maybe during that time while he was crying, maybe King David was thinking about how he lost that time that he did have with Absalom, and he didn't take the time to spend time with him or to just forgive him once he came back from fleeing. And and maybe perhaps King David was probably thinking like, man, if maybe I would have forgiven my son, earlier, maybe he wouldn't have had an anger towards me to want to steal my throne, to want to cause destruction or to want power. Because, at times when we allow remorse or anger to just overtake our emotions, it makes things worse at times. So, maybe King David was thinking about all of those things while his son passed away. So he was crying. So in verse 5, then Joab came into the house to the king and said, today you have disgraced all your servants who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives, and the lives of your concubines, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends. For you have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants. For today I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us had died today, then it would have pleased you well. So of course, Job, he was more focused on like we just won. We defeated someone who not only wanted to hurt you, but wanted to hurt innocent people. And although, yes, maybe that's a little cold of him to be like, why are you crying? It's like, well, that was his son, first of all. But Joab was like, it's like, you are crying and sad for this person, but many people's lives are saved today, and the other daughters and sons you have, and your wives and your family. So, like I said, maybe David was just regretful for the time he didn't like take advantage of for Absalom. So and after Joab spoke with the King David, um, eventually in verse 8 it says, then the king arose and sat in the gate. And they told all the people, saying, there is a king sitting in the gate. So all the people came before the king. So eventually King David was like, okay, I'll get up. I have people to, that want to also, not in a way celebrate, but they want to move forward and they're happy for the victory that was won over Israel, over the people. So shortly after, King David returns home to Jerusalem, but before he gets back home, along the way, Shimei came before the king. So if we remember from the last video, Shimei was from Saul's family, and Shimei was the one who was throwing rocks at him, at King David and the people, and began to curse David and just be disrespectful towards him. And he was telling King David how his son Absalom was the new king because of what David supposedly did to King Saul, um, and that's why everything bad was happening to King David. But the truth always comes out, and whatever Shimei told King David, was not true, because God was still on David's side and gave David the victory over the battle, even though it was against his son, right? But in verse 19, now that Shimei saw that David was still the king, Shimei knew that he betrayed the king, threw rocks at the king, right? So now Shimei came back. So let's see what he says. Then Shimei said to the king, do not let my lord impute iniquity to me, or remember what wrong your servant did on the day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore, here I am, the first to come today of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. So, like I said, Shemaiah was like, "What did I just do? If I continue, if I don't say something, this leads to exile." So I'm pretty sure, Shemaiah was like, "Oops, what did I just say to King David?" And in verse 21, it says, "But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, Shall not Shemaiah be put to death for this, because he has cursed the Lord's anointed?" So, yeah, like I said, Shammai threw rocks at the king, cursed him, disrespected him. So that just automatically, anyone really who disrespects the king that way, um, it leads to exile. But let's read verse 22. And David said, "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that I am king over Israel?" Therefore the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king swore to him. So obviously David was still saddened about Absalom. So he was not in the mood to be like, you know what? I'm not in the mood. I don't feel my very best. My son just died. I don't need nobody else dying today. Like, you're fine. Just go about your day, because it's like dealing with another death was not like what David wanted to do. He didn't want even his son to die, but unfortunately, it did happen during the battle. And um, and especially when Shammai told whatever Shammai told David was not true. So David was like, you know what? I'm not gonna bother with you. What you told me was not even true. God showed me otherwise because He gave me victory, and whatever you did was just out of despite. So it's not worth dealing with you right now. And then, right before King David crossed over the Jordan River to go to Jerusalem, back home, um, there was a man called Barzillai, um, and he was helping King David escort him to the Jordan River so that he can cross safely. So in verse 32, it says, "Now Barzillai was a very aged man, 80 years old, and he provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man." So while King David and his people were hiding during the time that Absalom was in battle, this man helped King David with supplies, food. So obviously, King David was really grateful for that. And the king said to Barzillai, "Come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem." But Barzillai said to the king, "How long have I to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? I am today 80 years old." So the guy was like, "I'm already old. I can't really hear. I can't really see. Why do you want me to go with you? I'll just be a burden because I'm 80 years old. There's not much for me to enjoy. I just want to stay here in my land. I want to, if my day comes, you know, I want to, die here. Like I'm fine." Um, and he says like, "Why do you like?" He's like, "And why should the king repay me with such a reward?" Like he's like, "What did I do? Like I just helped you. You're the king. Like that's my duty to help you." And I understand that you want to want to take me to Jerusalem for you to take care of me, but he's like, "I'm no one to receive so much of a reward, right?" But as I was reading again, I was like, maybe, the times that David was thinking about his son, how he didn't appreciate the time that he was with Absalom. Sometimes, and it's happened to me before. I've done it before. When someone may pass away, and we think about all the times that we could have spent time with them, or the times that it was just not worth being upset. We think about those times, and then in a way we kind of want to like not repay, but we want to fix that mistake with other people, which is fine because then we learn to appreciate those that are around us today. But that hurt is still there. So maybe King David was hurt for what he did to Absalom, his son, and wanted to, in a way, fix that hurt through, giving a man, Barzillai, telling him, "Come home with me. I'll take care of you." He's like, "No." I like. Thank you for such a generous gift, but I don't deserve that reward. All I did was help you, and I'm fine over here, But Barzillai did tell David to take his servant Chimham in verse 37. But here is your servant Chimham. Let him cross over with my lord the king and do for him what seems good to you. In verse 38, and the king answered, Chimham shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good to you. Now, whatever you request of me, I will do for you. Then all the people went over the Jordan, and the king had crossed over. The king kissed Barzillai, probably in the hand or the forehead, and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. So, so after all of that happened, um, King David went back home, and of course, in verse 20, there's another chapter 20. There's another battle, but if you guys want to read that, you guys can. But in conclusion, in the moment when we feel guilty for the mistakes that were made, and know that God will comfort and uplift you and encourage you um, with his loving and true words. In the sadness, he would give you peace. When you feel weak, he would give you strength. Um, and God will always be there. God will always be there. And I know for a fact that it has happened to me. It has happened to me so many times when I think to myself, oh, if I didn't do this, this wouldn't have happened. Or if I didn't choose this, I wouldn't be going through this right now. But the reality is that no matter how much you want to press the restart button, because that has happened to me where I'm like, where's the reset button? Let me go back because I know I can fix this, right? But in reality, that doesn't happen. We have to face through our consequences, whether we like it or not. Um, like for example, I like maybe I shared this already before, but I'll share it again briefly. A couple of years ago, I made a choice that led into some debt. And of course, after everything happened, I'm like, oh, I should have done that. I should have known better. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? So I was hard on myself because I just kept thinking about the mistake that I did. And it honestly didn't help me at all. It didn't help me. But even in those moments, I cried out to God, and He was still very, very merciful to give me strength so that I can continue to work. He gave me clarity so that I can continue to study in what He was, and what He was calling me to do. So even through all of that, it's just, although I would say like it's just not the best feeling in the whole world when we make a mistake and after we're like, I shouldn't have done that because now I'm going through this is going on, and it's not fun. I don't think it's ever gonna be fun. I don't think we're ever gonna. I don't know. I don't know if it happened, but I don't know if anybody's gonna, be cheerful, like, yay, I made a mistake, awesome. No, it's like, oh man, I made a mistake. What did I just do? But what we can change is what we choose to do today, tomorrow, and the days that we're gonna have here on earth, that we can make a change, make an impact, learn from our mistakes, and appreciate the people that we have today, right? And honestly, going through those experiences, mistakes, it could change us for the better. If we look at it in a different, like in a positive way, saying, okay, I made this mistake. It doesn't mean I'm a loser. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It doesn't mean that all I do is just wrong. No, it does not mean that. It just means that we can now um, evaluate what we just did and say, okay, what can I do next time to do things differently? Like, okay, I I was mad at that person. I don't want to waste time. It would be heartbreaking to know that they're not here the next day because, to be honest, we don't know when it's our last day, right? That's just the reality. We don't know. So it's like, what can we do today to better ourselves, to better the choices that we make for our future, and how we can continue to love those around us, our family, friends, so that the day that maybe they do go, that we don't are not left with regret. Like King David, he was left with regret. Like I said, like any child that passes away before a parent does, the parent's gonna feel horrible because no matter what, that's their child, right? But King David probably felt like, man, I could have done better. Like I had my son with me 2 years before he caused so much chaos, but he maybe perhaps caused chaos because he was angry with me. Maybe because I didn't forgive him when he was here, right? He had to come look for me and then I forgave him, right? Probably King David thought that. But yeah, so I still feel like this one's a little bit short compared to last video, but overall, with our mistakes, it causes us to move differently, appreciate the people that are still around us, learn from our mistakes so that we don't do it again, um, which is a good thing. We always, like before, I would be so, like I said, I would be hard on myself for making mistakes, because I thought like, oh man, I made a mistake. I must be, such a silly person to do such a simple mistake, right? But at the end, it's like, no, there's moments where, we may not know much information about something and we do it and then we learn after. And that's what matters. I think, um, no matter what mistakes we do, we gain more than we lose. Because when we lose, it's just for a moment. But we gain so much because now we're more aware. Now we can think things more like detail, like, okay, if I do this, this is gonna happen, or if I do this is gonna happen. Of course, we don't want to do it too much because then it may lead us to wanting control. But we don't have full control, right? Only God has the control. But and also with our mistakes, it leads us to leaning more on God. I know for a fact that after the debt and other mistakes, it only led me to cry out to God. It led me to pray to him. It led me to want what he wants from me, because I'm like, after how many years? After 29 years or so, after choosing for myself, nothing, like I said, like nothing came good out of it. Like it's like, what's the point of me continuing to choose for myself if I have seen repeatedly things not work out for me? There's no point. Or allowing my emotions to choose for me when I have seen over and over again it leading to heartbreak, it leading to me getting, or like me or others getting hurt. Like it's just not worth it. So that's why, even through all of this, it's like it's so important because it just leads us to God. It leads us to surrender, letting go, and not wanting control. Because when we want control, it's like, when things go wrong, it hurts us more because it didn't go the way that we thought. It didn't go the way that we wanted, right? So yeah. So with that being said, this is a little formula that God gave me as I was writing this, like maybe like 4 weeks ago. Um, but it's just in conclusion with everything from night two to today. So a small recap. So from night two to now, we talked about the decision David made concerning Bathsheba. Remember, Bathsheba was married, so he did anything he did everything he could to make Bathsheba his wife. So what he did to Uriah, he sent him to the front of the line. He was destroyed, right? So through that action, it opened the door for his son Amnon to do the same action that he did with Bathsheba. Amnon saw his sister. She was beautiful. She was a virgin, and that caused him to just run around with who knows what type of thoughts towards his sister. And he forced himself on his sister Tamar. And then Absalom, they were, remember, mind you, they're all siblings. They just have different moms. So Absalom and Tamar had to have the same mom. I mean, yeah, same mom, same dad, but Amnon had the same dad, different mom. So that led Absalom to get revenge, do justice by destroying Amnon, which, then after it was Absalom who ran away, and then Joab helped King David like reason with him so that Absalom can come back home. And then for the 2 years, that's when after he came back home, that's when King David finally forgave him. But even shortly after, that's when Absalom like was wanted to steal the throne. So it's all just very, very emotional, right? Very emotional. David sees Bathsheba, emotions, gets excited, wants her. He does everything he can to have her, emotion, right? Nothing through that process of King David, Amnon, Absalom, none of it was done with reasoning. Everything was done with emotion. So throughout these days, um, and this includes me, it includes me, okay? But it's just really with our emotions. Um, from what I'm hearing from the Lord is just to not give in to our emotions, because our emotions, if we personally can all look back to where our emotions have led us to make choices and mistakes, maybe maybe it just hasn't been good ones, right? But through that, it's like if we look back, if we think back to our parents, grandparents, and so on and so forth, some way, somehow, we are in the place that we are because of the decisions that were made before us, right? Which, is emotions, right? Emotions can overpower people's decisions. I know for a fact it did with me. So through that, it's like God just wants us to lean on Him. Even though when something seems exciting or too good to be true, to lean on Him when we may feel anger or hurt towards someone, instead of saying something hurtful or mean, to lean on him. Or when we want to be in a relationship with someone and they just seem like they're this perfect person, it's like to continue to lean on him. To not make decisions based on how we feel, or oh, this is how my heart feels. Like like no. We have to remember the verse that says that the heart can be deceitful. Even our hearts can be deceitful, because if our hearts can be deceitful, it's connected to in a way, our emotions are connected to the flesh. So that's why it's always good to surrender to God. Always surrender to Him. Always seek Him. But like I said, back to the formula that God gave me. So through learning with everything that happened with King David, so the attitude, right? The attitude plus awareness plus listening, right? So when we are in a situation, it depends on how our attitudes is, right? Do we take this like our attitudes? Like, is it gonna make us explode? Is it gonna make us angry? Is it gonna make us sad? Like, how do I handle the situation with peace, with composure, right? Like letting the Holy Spirit guide us, right? In our eyes, observing what is going on. Is this something that is I'm seeing that is good, or is this something that I'm seeing that is not good? What is my like? Where's my attention going to, right? And when we listen, right, it's like the lies that are even being said. Do we listen to that? Do we let that move us, right? Because all of that put together, it ultimately will result in our actions, our results, right? So that goes back to with emotions. Like, are we going to allow our emotions to continue to control us, make us regret after what we say or do when we're angry, right? Or even when we're excited, like later on, the aftermath is like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? So, and also, obedience always equals moving forward, right? And disobedience, it causes us to delay ourselves. Um, but even through all of this, God's grace, He will always get us back to where we need to be. Even when our emotions get in the way, even when our own decisions get in the way, causes delay because we weren't supposed to do that from the first place, or when we say something, it causes conflict. Like, even through all of those things, the Lord will always get us back on track, and He corrects those that He loves. So, He's our Heavenly Father. As any parents, we want the best for our children. And imagine Him, how He wants the very best for us, the very best. So, with all that being said, next week, I don't know where the Lord will lead us with the next lesson. So of course I'll be praying that the Holy Spirit lead me, guide me to what the Lord wants to tell you guys. But I thank you so much for today, night 5. How fun! But I hope you guys have a great night and blessed rest of your week. And thank you so much for joining. Bye.